going out of the election, I think whoever's the local MP needs to know that the federal government has not been a strong partner with local governments in terms of supporting what we need. They're giving us fewer and fewer dollars. They're increasing the costs of things that we have to do. They're saying build more housing, but where's the money to support that?
The countdown to election day is ticking by, and the party leaders are crisscrossing Canada, shoring up support for their parties and local candidates. Over the course of the federal campaign, we are speaking with municipal leaders from coast to coast to coast. What do municipalities want to see addressed in this pivotal election? That's exactly what we're here to discover on Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025. From housing to infrastructure, from bail reform to resource development, and from agriculture to social services, municipalities across Canada are tackling a wide range of challenges. But they can't do it alone. They need a strong and reliable partner at the federal level to help build stronger, more resilient communities. Today, we're diving into two ridings of Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola, and Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies. Now, the city of Kamloops has been split into two different ridings this election, with the north part of the city going into Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola, and the southern part of the city being put into Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies. From 2004 to 2025, the city of Kamloops, British Columbia was solely in the riding of Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou. Since 2004, the city has been represented by a Conservative member of Parliament. From Betty Hinton from 2004 to 2008, then Kathy McLeod from 2008 to 2021, and in the last election, Conservative MP Frank Caputo. Conservative MP Caputo will be running in the riding of Kamloops Thompson Nicola, while Mel Arnold, who was the Conservative MP for North Okanagan Shuswap, will be running in the riding of Kamloops Shuswap Central Rockies. Now, to discuss the wants and the needs of both of these ridings in the city of Kamloops, British Columbia, we are pleased to be joined by Kamloops Councillor Nancy Bepple. Without further ado, let's go. Councillor, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about the city of Kamloops and this upcoming April 28th, 45th general election here in Canada. And I want to start by getting to know what is the city of Kamloops from a council perspective, but also you as councillor looking to hear from party leaders and local candidates in this upcoming election?
Well, I think that the concerns of our city haven't changed. So one is in terms of housing. So it's really great hearing different candidates talking about housing, but housing needs infrastructure. It needs processes like development engineering services and that type of thing. I would hope that whoever gets elected going forward will look at how the federal government serves local governments to meet the goal of housing. And a really, really good example is the housing funding that's been in place that cities apply for. And congratulations to the cities that have got that funding. City of Kamloops has been the third fastest growing municipality in the country. We've applied twice for that funding to help with bringing on housing, and we haven't got it. So I think, and I don't think this is not an issue just for Kamloops. I hear it from colleagues across country, is looking at better ways for the federal government to support local governments to deliver on housing. Because the federal government can say they're going to build housing. It's actually local governments that do land use, they do development permits, they work with the builder community to set what the building codes are going to be locally. All those things are done locally, not at the federal government level. Oh, and we build the pipes, the water, the sewer, the roads as well.
Now, in the last 21 years, because I'm one of those people that likes to look at data, since 2004, the Conservative Party of Canada has held the seat that is Kamloops. But in 2025, on April 28th, the people of Kamloops, depending on where you are located in the city, will be electing not one, but two people to represent the city of Kamloops. You talk about how you were the third fastest growing municipality in Canada, and that means that you now have two seats. And I want to make sure I get the names of the ridings here right. Kamloops, Thompson, Nicola, and the other being the southern part, which is now Kamloops, Shuswap, Central Rockies. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that right. What does it mean for the city to now have potentially two voices in Ottawa representing them, whether they be the Conservatives again or a new party that might win?
Yeah, I think it's good for Kamloops. In terms of the outlying areas, I mean, Kamloops has always had a strong contingency of rural representatives within our riding. What I like to call the Kamloops Shuswap Central Rockies is actually it's almost like it's Highway 1 from Kamloops to the Alberta border. That's the main swath of that riding, and then it goes down a little bit into northern Okanagan as well. And then the other riding is more of the traditional riding of Kamloops, but having carved off a third of or half of Kamloops, but it's added merit. The places that are in the ridings, not all of them are, but primarily they're within the Thompson Nicola Regional District, which is Kamloops is also a part of. So I think that having two voices, hopefully we can get issues that are not just issues for the city that are important, but also the rural areas. And I think there's a lot of experience understanding what those needs are because we work with them, say, through the TNRD, for instance.
What is this? You talked about infrastructure and housing, and you want a government to work with municipalities to build these houses because municipalities do lay the foundation to get these housing built. What specifically are you looking for from the next federal government or from the local party leaders and local candidates to ease your mind that after April 28th, that this issue will be addressed, that the next government, the next MPs will want to work with municipal leaders like yourself to address this housing challenge?
Well, one of the biggest things that's important is not just building houses, but building them quickly. And so if we can speed up the development process, and how can we speed up the development process? It's by automating it, maybe bringing in some AI, using online applications. Those things are great. That's some of what City of Kamloops asked for to be funded by the federal government. It's also in terms of really being willing to partner on uh, the cost of infrastructure. So every new house or home you bring in, there's like $100,000 plus cost in terms of infrastructure. Eventually, that's cost of the new homeowner. I mean, through different ways or through taxation for everybody. But there is a cost when you build housing, and uh, local government has such limited opportunities to collect money for development. We only really have property taxes and development cost charges. We're looking, I would say I mean, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has not forgotten its desire to work with the federal government to find other funding sources, maybe linked to GDP, that will help pay for the infrastructure because it's not just about housing, it's about economic growth. Uh, we, as local governments, have to pay for the upgrades to railways. That's another thing you hear in the election is we've got to improve our trade, we've got to improve our ports, we've got to improve the means to get goods to the ports. Well, Kamloops is hoofing the bill here in Kamloops. Every municipality that has railways that go through it is paying for railway crossing upgrades and the like, uh, so that those railway cars can go through our cities more efficiently. That's fine, but we only get 8 to 12 cents on the dollar of every tax dollar collected in Canada as a local government. We want to partner with the federal government to ensure that the economy is strong. We want to partner with federal government to ensure that housing gets built. We want to make sure that we have the infrastructure that we need. But I would say that expecting it to be the burden of local property taxpayers is really difficult, especially when you look at the resources available to the federal government.
Are you getting a sense on the ground in Kamloops that the local candidates are willing to have that conversation? Because we typically forget that in Canada we have 343 members of parliament, and the party with the majority of those seats wins, and that person, their leader, becomes prime minister. We don't elect a prime minister; we elect party members to form a government. In the early days of this campaign, I know we're only a week and a half into it, but as of recording this, are you hearing from local candidates about the needs and wants and the challenges that municipalities are facing? Because right now, and I'm going to sort of kind of drop a T-bomb here, but the Trump of it is that Trump is basically changing the narrative of this entire campaign, and every other issue doesn't matter. And these tariffs are the things that people are talking about. But locally, are you hearing from your local candidates about the challenges that municipalities are facing and they wanting to work with the city to address them?
Um, I would say uh, politics is a long game. So I mean, I'm part of Federation Canadian Municipalities Committees, so we go once a year and talk to MPs in uh, Ottawa, and also if I ever have a chance locally, I talk to who the current MP is or who will be the new MPs. I mean, I've talked to both of the current MPs about issues, and it, I don't think that you build that relationship over the length of a campaign. You build it over the 4 years. And the strategy of FCM is that, first of all, the issues in terms of dealing with Trump, um, it it is, I would say, united local, provincial, and federal governments
Yeah.
on the most part. So through FCM, I mean, we want to be a part of whatever solutions there are that are we're dealing with in terms of the country. So I know at least 2 or 3 delegations from the FCM have gone down to the States to meet with local electeds there to try to get them to understand not the impacts of the tariffs per se in Canada, but how the tariffs that Trump is going to impose are going to impact their cities, because they're the ones, the tariffs are inbound on goods that they're going to be paying for from Canada. So I think that the local government has to work with the provincial and federal governments um, to make sure that there's a united voice, and that's the strategy that FCM has undertaken. And uh, I mean, whoever gets elected locally, they're going to be the MPs for Kamloops, and
Yeah.
they will need to be listening to what our concerns are. It doesn't matter what party they are in. Um, and I mean, every party has their policies, but uh, our job locally and through groups like Federation of Canadian Municipalities or the provincial organizations, uh, is to make sure that they understand concerns. And they're fairly consistent across local government, I would say.
Yeah, heading back to Kamloops for a second. This your riding, the old riding, I should say, not the current two new ridings, but your area has been a traditionally conservative stronghold. Are you concerned that the party leaders may not look at the issues that are going on in Kamloops because it has traditionally gone to just one party over the last 20 some odd years, that the NDP, the Liberals may not want to say, let's spend some time in Kelowna or in Kamloops because it's going to go conservative. So what's the point? Are you concerned that the issues aren't going to be on the national stage because you have traditionally voted, and I say you as the riding you, traditionally voted for one party in the last seven elections?
Yeah, I mean, we're not the hotbed of Metro Toronto. We
Or
don't
downtown
hold the
Vancouver?
balance of, I would say that, when you're electing someone, you want to elect someone that is not just, there's the party, but then there's also somebody who can be a strong advocate as an MP. Um, but uh, at the end of the day, I look around Kamloops, there are definitely issues that I think need to be addressed, like why is the city of Kamloops paying such a high cost for upgrading the railway infrastructure? We're the busiest main line in Western Canada. That means that the entire Western Canada benefits having the railway go through Kamloops. Why is our city having to pay for that? That would be something I would think about. Or a little bit more broadly, but I know this is actually an issue across BC and probably across, I don't know how they fund things other places, is small water systems. So in the Thompson and Nicola Regional District, there are 12 small water systems, some with as few as 14 or 15 users, up to 200. Those individuals do not have the financial means to pay for the cost of upgrading their systems. The tax system that we have is just not and there's not at all sufficient grants. So how is it that we are not looking at supporting in rural areas water systems, so that those people can have a service that we say is important across country? So that would be something I think in our region that we would look at. And then just going back to grant-based funding, which, like I said, we applied twice for the housing grant. We didn't get it. Uh,
Did they
and
tell
you
you
look
why?
at in our,
Did they tell you why you didn't get
I,
the grant? Or was it
I
more of
don't,
the
I'm not sure. But what I can say is that if you look at the percentage of funding the city of Kamloops gets from provincial and federal, uh, it's been going down and down and down. And at the same time, things like policing costs are going up and up and up. That's another one where the federal government holds the cards. They negotiate with the RCMP, they set the contract, they dictate that Kamloops has now got body cameras. We had no input on, our costs go up. We didn't get, so I think that there's, going out of the election, I think whoever's the local MP needs to know that the federal government has not been a strong partner with local governments in terms of supporting what we need. They're giving us fewer and fewer dollars. They're increasing the costs of things that we have to do. They're saying build more housing, but where's the money to support that? Uh, so I would say every party has the different idea of how they're going to get somewhere. Um, but they need to know that the local governments are who delivers those services, and they really need to partner with us, um, and come to the table with some money.
They certainly do. Now, I would be hard pressed to say that Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney, Jagmeet Singh are going to spend some time out in Kamloops. We talked about it just recently, but um, what I know for a fact is that there will be local candidates. There will be the Conservative Party, there will be the Liberal Party, there may be the NDP, Greens, all door knocking during this campaign heading up until April 28th, which is election day. What should residents of Kamloops be asking their local candidates when it comes to municipal issues, and what municipalities need from their federal government in Kamloops?
Well, I mean, I think I can't tell them what they're going to say because usually everybody has one heartfelt issue.
Yeah.
Um, if they're somebody who thinks a little bit longer term, then they may think about the fact that the RCMP contract is, I think it's in 7 years. 7 years goes by quickly. It's the biggest cost on our property taxes is policing. And the MPs need to start to think about how what happens at the federal government level in terms of policing is going to impact them here. So, so that would be one. Um, Another is that if they want housing, which I mean, that's on being consistent for a while as to what they've been talking about, then they really have to be saying, how can we support the local home builders? How can we support the local cities to build housing? And I think that it's more useful to help create tools and processes that make things go faster than it is to penalize local governments who don't deliver on housing, because we're the people that are responsible for setting zoning, doing the development engineering services, building codes and the like, but we have limited means to do that. It's either property taxes or development cost charges. So I don't see the federal government putting much money into that whole process. If they want more housing, then I think people locally could ask about that. Uh, and then I think there will be a whole worry about Trump. And uh, it might be a good thing to ask is how will the federal government specifically support Kamloops? Because every economy is different. Um, One of the things that it hasn't got to do with Trump, but it's still it's definitely a federal government policy is that the federal government changed the international student visa requirements, and I think that the number of international students in Kamloops will go down by a third or maybe a half. That will have a huge,
Yeah.
huge impact on our local economy. And definitely the federal government was addressing issues that were across the country in terms of uh, how the international students were using the visas or how some colleges were taking advantage of students. But it's sort of like you're throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And so now here, TRU, that's our local university, had a fantastic international program. It is just drying up because of that policy. So I think that that would be something really worthwhile asking on the doorstep is what are you going to do to get more international students back in Kamloops? They're a huge success here, not just when they're a student, but they leave and you see them in every part of Kamloops working um, in all sorts of different jobs. It's a huge success for our community, for the students, and with a so that would be something I think that they could ask on the doorstep about our community that would make a difference.
So I am cautious of time, and I have one last question for you. And I think you've talked about it a bit, but I want to just wrap it up into a nice little package here. Now, the polls are very close, and what happens today is not dictative of what's going to happen on April 28th. April 28th, we do not know what's going to happen because the polls could change dramatically tomorrow, the next day. Literally, they could change right up until April 27th. And as they always say, the best poll is the election day poll, and that is the one that only matters. What do you want to see from the next government? We talk about the infrastructure challenges, we talk about the housing, but how can the next government help the city of Kamloops grow sustainably?
Being far from the center of power, it sometimes feels like Kamloops is a bit forgotten by Ottawa. Um, but there are, and the examples I gave, they're not unique to Kamloops. I mean, I'm on the BC caucus for FCM, and I hear the same sorts of things again and again. But policing costs have escalated. There's uncertainty in the future, what's going to happen. It's a huge part of our budget. We're trying to decide where we're going to go. That's something that's on the federal level needs to be addressed. Two is housing. And it's a different question in larger centers and in smaller centers. Like smaller centers, they really can't pay for infrastructure like in a small village. Kamloops, we can foot the bill, but uh, it makes the housing that much more expensive, right? So where is the federal government going to come to the table in terms of infrastructure? And then in terms of economic health, the federal government needs to recognize that local governments are key to economic growth. And a very simple example, which I gave you, was railways, where here, City of Kamloops, we're sinking millions of dollars into railway uh, intersections. And I mean, we have to. Actually, the railways tell us to, we have to. Um, but the the railways are what delivers billions of dollars of goods across the country from our ports and to our ports. Uh, it's something that's needed for the prosperity of everyone in the country. Where is the federal government? And the federal government has given us some grants, but they're limited. And just like the grants for the housing, which didn't come to us, you apply, you wait, you may get it. And in some cases, by the time you got the grant, the cost of the project has gone up. Uh, and I can think of one exactly that happened. So the federal government, we are partnering with the federal government and the provincial government on the threats to Trump. The reverse has to come where the federal government sees local governments as partners who can help deliver the things that they want to deliver. They don't build housing. The local government does. They always talk about safety, especially some of the some of the parties, it's a huge issue. It's community safety. It's local taxpayers who are paying for the RCMP salaries. So, so where is this? Where they talk about what they want to do, but I don't sometimes think they look in who has the boots on the ground, and it's the local government who's delivering the services. So rather than dictating, I think it would be good for them to come and sit with us and say, how can we work together better? Federal government says we want more community safety, but it's the local taxpayers who are paying for the RCMP or policing costs, and we those costs have been escalating and escalating and escalating. Uh, and they don't come to local governments and say, how will this work better? They just dictate You have to have body cameras suddenly. No consultation, we're paying the costs. So what I would hope is that whoever gets elected to the federal government, that they don't simply stand in the House of Commons and have rhetoric about what they want. They take the time, like FCM, the the every year 200 local governments electeds like me go to Ottawa every year to meet with MPs to say this is what's this is what is important to us. Maybe they should be sitting down with their local electeds and finding out what the issues are as well.
Well, it's going to be fun at this year's Federation of Canadian Municipalities because that is taking place less than a month after this federal election. So I can imagine it's going to be a busy, busy time. Councillor Bepple, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me. It's always a pleasure when you come on the show and sit down and talk to you because I always get so
Oh, thank
informed
you.
about what's going on in Kamloops and get so knowledgeable. I feel so knowledgeable afterwards about what's going on in your part of British Columbia. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for taking time to be on the show today.
Well, it's always great to see you in person, Chris, and thanks so much for the work you do. Okay, take care.
And thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025. Now, we hope you enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of municipal politics when it comes to this federal election. To learn more about the show and to learn more about the people and the communities that we feature on this show, visit us online at crossborderinterviews.ca. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. Now, your support means the world to us. So share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we're back with a brand new episode of Municipal Affairs Canada Votes 2025 tomorrow at 10. Till then, everyone.